I have a few questions I would like to ask, if I may. Firstly, as I'm sure you might have read in the newspapers recently, a moon rock that was on display in a Dutch museum, which you, Neil, and Mike had given to the then ambassador to the Netherlands at the time, it turned out to be a piece of petrified wood. I was wondering, at the time, when you were in possession of this, were you aware that this was petrified wood, or were you also led to believe that it was a genuine moon rock?
Petrified wood? Well, that doesn't sound like it came from the moon. The samples that we, as best I can recall, that we distributed among world leaders in our 45-day around-the-world trip were encased in plastic lucite so that you could see the small amount of moon dust. Now, what happens to that display once it is presented to somebody is not the responsibility of the United States, and it certainly isn't the responsibility of the crew that gave it to them. And whether that got changed, substituted for something that then became valuable to someone else, and they substituted a piece of petrified wood. And that would be my more probable explanation for this. Now, who did that? We have no idea. But I'm sure the United States would not present to world leaders a piece of petrified wood claiming that it was a sample from the moon.
Okay, so you're telling me that you give these samples out to the people and someone swapped it around after you gave it to the world leader, probably?
Well, that's my best guess, but it's a guess. I have no information at all.
Okay.
I'm Paul Martin with NASA's Office of Inspector General. In light of the enormous costs and challenges and the critical decisions that need to be made in the next several years, we examine NASA's plans for human exploration beyond low Earth orbit.
Water, how do you recycle the oxygen? It's the main crucible test bed where we've been trying to grind out all the lessons that will eventually let us go to the moon,
Technologies that we're testing out on space station are definitely helping us with our goals of going beyond low Earth orbit.
Right now, we only can fly in Earth orbit. That's the farthest that we can go.
We're actually going to need some technological breakthroughs that we don't have yet. And what we can do is, for some of this low orbit stuff, some of the more routine space travel. And we can't just keep on doing the same old things that we've been doing and thinking that somehow is going to get us to where we want to go. Some have said, for instance, that this plan gives up our leadership in space by failing to produce plans within NASA to reach low Earth orbit.
But we're also really pushing the boundaries in terms of where we're going forward with exploration. I think humans are naturally driven to do this, and this is really the beginning, I think, of human beings leaving low Earth orbit. I certainly plan on being around to see that.
I am thrilled to announce that the SpaceX Dragon capsule has successfully reached low Earth orbit.
NASA's Goddard Space Center in Maryland, home to the National Space Science Data Archives.
This film you're making now, what is it? Does it have a name? I mean, do you have a name for it yet, or are you?
I'm calling it Did We Go?
Did We Go? Okay. Okay.
Doesn't have it either. The Smithsonian doesn't have it. Johnson doesn't have it.
Right. We've been unable to track it down. I mean, we don't know where this telemetry data ended up, and we don't know what path it may have taken. So, unfortunately, I'm afraid I can't really give you much of a clue as to where this data ended up and whether it still exists.
It was all recorded on these telemetry tapes. So where is this hard evidence?
I haven't seen anything that indicates the telemetry data is even in existence, and as I said, even if we had it, we don't have the machines to play it back.
But your own research has shown the telemetry data is missing.
That's right.
I'd go to the moon in a nanosecond. The problem is we don't have the technology to do that anymore. We used to, but we destroyed that technology, and it's a painful process to build it back again.
The radiation belts are two donut-shaped regions that encircle the Earth. They're home to very intense radiation.
There's an additional problem for the crew who are going to set foot on the surface of the moon, a problem I haven't yet told you about, as if all the others weren't problem enough. The people who are going to walk on the moon are walking on a surface which itself is creating yet more radiation. Charged particles are emitted, impact the surface of the moon, which has no atmosphere like our Earth does, and it has no magnetic field like our Earth does. Those protons are traveling at such high speeds that they're actually creating neutron radiation off the surface. So when it comes to people traveling into space, we have to consider many, many factors.
To protect the astronauts from the Van Allen radiation belts, the lunar module would have required 6 feet of lead shielding. But here's what they really had for protection.
Obviously, the only shielding they had was the literally paper-thin outer hull of aluminum, and their suits consisting of glass fiber, some aluminum fibers, and silicon rubber.
It's very interesting concerning radiation that the astronauts were protected by a thin film of aluminum when here on Earth they put a lead shield on us when they take a dental x-ray.
As we get further away from Earth, we'll pass through the Van Allen belts, an area of dangerous radiation. Radiation like this could harm the guidance systems, onboard computers, or other electronics on Orion. Naturally, we have to pass through this danger zone twice, once up and once back. But Orion has protection. Shielding will be put to the test as the vehicle cuts through the waves of radiation. Sensors aboard will record radiation levels for scientists to study. We must solve these challenges before we send people through this region of space. For this flight, it's time to head home.
Once we travel beyond low Earth orbit, the crew will be exposed to larger amounts of radiation. So we have to design both the crew protection systems and our electronic systems to withstand this radiation.
So that would mean that Neil Armstrong, Michael Collins and Buzz Aldrin were a tough bunch of SOBs able to withstand all that brutal radiation, considering these challenges are still yet to be solved.
Any ill effects from the Van Allen radiation belts?
No. Now, I'm not sure we went far enough out to encounter the Van Allen radiation belt. Maybe we did. I don't know the distance to the Van Allen radiation belt, and if we did, it wasn't a problem. If we were going to encounter it, then we would have had to build the spacecraft and the spacesuit to not give humans a problem. You don't just build something and hope it works.
The belts are 1,000 miles to 25,000 miles above the Earth.
Then we went right out through them.
No effects on your cells?
We didn't even know it. I don't think anybody, well, maybe somebody said you went through the radiation belt, but we didn't feel it inside, and we didn't get any, added radiation.
We have the footage of them in the space capsule, still in Earth orbit, covering up a small section of the window, so you can see through the circle and making that look like that was the Earth. And this is a joke. I mean, how do people think this is real?
We all witness the moon only illuminating the local clouds around it. That is because it is also a local light, but one with opposite effects from the sun. As we can all agree, shade from the sun is cooler than direct sunlight. But did you know the moon's shade is actually warmer than direct moonlight? The moon produces cold light, something the science priests must have forgotten to teach us all about in school. Not only that, but at times we can see stars through the moon, proving it is not some solid rock 238,900 miles away. In the 60s, true science regarding the moon was the shadow band topic of its era.
I consider myself to be an ordinary, humble person who wants to surf
mankind with what man has striven for from the beginning of consciousness, with truth and understanding of the world.
Well, now, one thing, you have a theory about the moon, and we expect to be able to get observable facts about the moon fairly soon. What is your theory?
Well, it is by now rather more than a theory. 10 or 11 years ago, I stated to various scientists that the moon is not a piece of rock, but it is plasma, cosmic plasma. Gravitational theories are out, and a new concept of the cosmos and of its laws has to be evolved. This fact will eventually be confirmed. I made certain predictions which were already confirmed in 1958, and the situation now is coming close to a complete confirmation.
What will be the result if you're proved to be correct in your theories?
The result will be profound and decisive. Because if the moon is a plasma, no man will ever land on it. And
The Americans and Russians are thinking of landing men on it.
well, that will never happen.
People actually believe they walked on the moon, talked with Nixon, played golf, drove a car, and planted a flag.
If you really believe that Neil Armstrong took the first step, then why do you give any credit to the cameraman already there waiting for him?
These guys were all U.S. military men coerced into acting. They wanted the money and power that came with the deal, of course. The problem was, they were terrible actors. They couldn't even pretend to be excited, knowing they were lying to the world. But the show had to go on. Michael Collins and Neil Armstrong rarely spoke in public about it. But there was one man not shy about lying to your face. The spokesperson for the Apollo deception.
It's my pleasure to present Colonel Edwin Aldrin.
No handshake, hug, smile. Their facial expressions are similar to those experiencing constipation, not celebrating an accomplishment.
Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, it is with a great sense of pride as an American and with humility as a human being that I say to you today what no men have been privileged to say before. We walked on the moon.
I mean, they couldn't pay them enough to look up and smile? Sunlight and moonlight clearly have altogether different properties, and furthermore, the moon itself cannot physically be both a spherical body and a reflector of the sun's light. Reflectors must be flat or concave for the light rays to have any angle of incidence. If a reflector's surface is convex, then every ray of light points in a direct line with the radius perpendicular to the surface, resulting in no reflection.
Why has nobody been to the moon in such a long time?
That's not an 8-year-old's question. That's my question. I want to know, but I think I know. Because we didn't go there, and that's the way it happened.